This ship collected 5 different life forms from the darkest corners of the universe. Monsters.
Collision imminent.
Invasive species. Predatory. If we don't lock them down, it will be too late.
Beware, spoiler phobes! You have stumbled into A Storm of Spoilers, a podcast currently covering the FX on Hulu series Alien Earth. This week, we're catching up with what happened on the USS Maginot when it was 17 days away from Earth, which includes lots of alien action and some messed up company politics. We might have been misgendering Mr. Octo, and we found out how the Stephen Miller worm reproduces. This week's podcast is split into calm and storm sections. In the first calm section, we will only be talking about the first 5 episodes of the series up to the newest episode of Alien Earth titled In Space, No One. Then, after ample warning, we enter the storm section where Neil and I will speculate where the rest of this season goes and how it connects to the wider franchise. Why, hello, I'm Dave Gonzalez, and I think I'm rooting for the eye monster.
And I'm Neil Miller, and today I am validated for always using a water bottle with a closable straw lid. And welcome back to A Storm of Spoilers. Before we get started, as always, a little bit of housekeeping. This may be a little repetitive, but you know, this might be your first episode with us. You might be like, flashback episode. Got to see what Dave and Neil have to say. And if so, welcome. You are probably not listening to this on Wednesday. We are a day late this week due to some illness on my part. Just a awful bout of what I am calling extraterrestrial brainworms eating away, causing a migraine, the likes of which on an intergalactic scale. But future podcasts, barring any more of that, will be back on Wednesday afternoons, continuing to cover Alien Earth for the rest of the season. And you can also get these pods in video form on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Da7e, Da7e and Neil, where you can see our faces and random t-shirts and facial expressions and whatnot. If that's
My mom has
thing.
picked up how many cans of sparkling water I ingest per episode.
Oh, all right. Maybe she'll notice how many different drinks I have this week, because in true podcaster form, if you don't have like 3 different drinks, are you even doing it right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Other things you can get from us. I will be back to streaming on Twitch due to the illness this week. Did not get a chance to stream Alien Isolation on Wednesday, but we're definitely going to get back to that next week. Still about halfway through the game, so I'm not super worried about it. Twitch.tv/Neil. That'll be Wednesday evening around 8 o'clock. And that'll be continued fun as we try and escape the Sevastopol station with Amanda Ripley and learn about what's going on that side of the universe. For more from us that is not necessarily Alien Earth related, you can join us on our Patreon, patreon.com/Dave and Neil, for more content from projects we've done on this feed, like our Lost watch project, our Game of Thrones era. Dave and I did a wonderful Twin Peaks rewatch. We did The Leftovers. We're currently doing a Hannibal rewatch podcast, and you get access to our wonderful Slack, where folks are discussing everything from Alien Earth to pop culture, other pop culture things, to politics and sports and food. There's a lot of food talk in there, and it makes me hungry all the time. Not necessarily while watching this episode of Alien Earth, but under other circumstances, it makes me hungry. Plus, you get a new adventure pod every week from us. This coming month, we're going to be doing samurai movie deep dives, which is going to be very fun. So join us over on the Patreon. That brings us to how you can get in touch with this show. You can as always, send a raven to stormofspoilers@gmail.com. Several of you have, and we're going to spritz those in throughout the episode. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave us a 5-star rating. Say whatever you want, nice or otherwise. Mostly people saying nice things. Here's one, Dave, directed at you. This is actually from a couple of weeks ago. We haven't had a new one this week, but I was saving this one. This
Okay.
is from Apple Podcasts from Sarah, who writes, writing in because Dave and Neil are amazing and deserve all the stars, but like another recent reviewer, to remind Dave, it is not all embarrassing to be watching Foundation. My husband, Joe, and I have now named 2 animals after Foundation characters, a dog, Demerzel, and a cat, Cleon the 17th. We are already contemplating what name we'll use for a pet we don't yet own. Dave, please feel free to throw out your own vote. Love the show and you both. Thanks for all the years of killer content. Dave, with further encouragement from the folks for you to watch more Foundation. I only recognize one of those. I know what Cleon the 17th is.
Me too. He's the Cleon that chooses peace. I am going to say something here that it's only come up twice, but here's a good place as ever to bring it up again. I'm not going to name pets, and I'm not going to draw any more tattoos.
Okay.
I don't want to be a permanent part of your guys' life. Just come talk to me about pop culture. But I do think those are excellent names for your pets.
Yeah, very inspired names.
Absolutely.
Fact, it's certainly unique. All right, moving on to some ravens that we received. They're going to get us into our calm discussion this week in a little segment we like to call Mother, Send a Raven. Acknowledge. These are ravens we're going to acknowledge this week. First one comes from Ian. We've got, this was a fairly long one, but I think has a lot of relevant and useful information. Ian says, Neil's research into the real world success of the Snuggie left me scratching my head as to how the writers had muddled up that line so badly. Did they just blow it, not realizing the Snuggie was an invention people very much wanted? But then I started to think maybe it's just the character Adam who got it wrong. In the same way, Boy Cavalier misattributed the Arthur C. Clarke quote to Asimov. Adam just thought that this blanket with sleeves must have been a dud in the marketplace. These two strange errors taken together suggest a future where even the elite just can't keep facts straight. Perhaps in the same way that Microsoft Word has made all of us worse spellers, a future of AI use has made the ability to retain basic facts an archaic skill that even prodigies like the boy genius no longer possess. Unfortunately, this kind of generalized mental degradation goes hand in hand with Ice Age being a cultural touchstone. The theme was further developed in this week's episode, where the level of ineptitude was mind-boggling. At first, I thought it was just lazy writing, that the zookeeper Chibuzo was so bad at containing the creatures, but everyone in that crew was a disaster, from the kid mixing up geology and biology, to the doctor's plan to remove the ticks, to the captain's complete inability to make a simple decision, to Tang, almost amazingly not a synth, interesting, taking so long to mention to Morrow where the sabotage was coming from. While it is still possible for the 5 companies to make technical advances, there's just a baseline level of stupidity and ineptitude in this future world that I am starting to think is intentional. Regardless, by the time Zaveri got locked out this time, I thought to myself, good riddance. Dave, I had a similar thought. Because I think this, and you know what, this might be influenced by the fact that this is a show being written in 2025. Right. Through a 2025 lens, where it is clear that the advances in technology are in many ways making us dumber. And I guess we should credit Mike Judge for seeing this coming with his movie Idiocracy. But like, for instance, I saw a headline a few weeks ago, I guess a few months ago at this point, about the drastic drop in use of ChatGPT at the end of the school year, which suggests to me that kids were using that like the main usage of that was to get the kids through the school year and help them, I guess, retain enough information to get them passing grades. And then everyone is like, nah, I don't need knowledge anymore. It's summertime. Yeah. Which, listen, I get the impulse, but like, are we becoming dumber because we're basically offloading a lot of the intellectual heft or intellectual business of being human and critical thinking and whatnot to Grok and ChatGPT? I think is definitely something that is in the air now, and so I think Ian might be onto something here as far as what this vision of the future is saying about humanity.
Yes, I do think the vision of the future, especially this episode, because it has to both be a future that functions for the story that Alien Earth is telling this season, but also very specifically this episode, a throwback to a version of the future that was futuristic in the 70s.
Mhm.
So it has to sort of straddle both of those things. And I think the strength of this episode and the Alien Earth universe is it is using a lot of the trappings of the Alien universe in terms of our relationship to corporations and the company to extend a little bit more to body autonomy in the way that I think a lot of good entries in the Alien franchise does, while also being like in a corporation that is this large, in corporations that are this large, it has many moving pieces, and most of those moving pieces are like cogs that don't know what they're doing outside of their specialization. I would say almost maybe. Like, I don't know. I tried to go through, and maybe we'll cover this more in the episode, but I tried to go through and identify each crew member and sort of what they did. And it's tough because some of them are sort of just bodies. And so I could make the assumption that they were there to help procure different species as they were on this like research trip. But otherwise, it
someone
seems
to
like
carry the gear. This like on, when they go down to the planet, the scientists need someone to carry the box.
Right. But most of these people seem to be randomly assigned. Obviously, the assistant engineer doesn't even really know what he's doing. Malachite is an assistant, but we don't actually see him doing any sort of repairs. We hear he's welding a new shaft or something. So he's obviously capable of doing some grunt work, but he doesn't have the training. There seems to be a promised apprenticeship program that isn't working, that I think is further exemplified.
He doesn't even seem to really know what the word apprentice means.
Right, exactly.
So
he's
interesting.
Obviously just a body. Raheem, the medical officer, does seem to have like some sort of medical knowledge, but doesn't seem to quite like be a doctor. I don't see anyone reference him as a doctor. They talk about him smoking being weird, and then they talk about him being a former addict, which I've just having just recently seen The Pit this year. They don't usually let those people be doctors once they figure that out. So the idea that this crew kind of came together as people who were capable of being missing for 65 years more than people who are necessarily the best at what they're doing. It really goes to show, I think, that you have these ships like the Maginot, and then you have these ships like the Nostromo, and then you have the Prometheus, which is a straight up science ship with really nice insides and a cool medical bay that does everything for you. But if that's the Cadillac of the deep space investigation, the Maginot is definitely just a bunch of meat sacks on a missile, is what we learned this week.
Yeah, I mean, the Maginot, I feel like what we learned this week is that it's basically the Nostromo, but they have guns and more crew, or at least they started with more crew.
Right.
And yeah, like Raheem is an interesting character because he gives off like combat medic vibes, like guy who has some medical skills, but is deeply damaged. And yeah, everybody in the eyes of the company, at least, is very disposable in this situation. And, the only person who seems to be relatively important to the company is Yutani's favorite, Morrow, but we don't really learn that until the end. So, but yeah, I think, but back to Ian's point, I definitely think there is, and we'll see how this continues to play once we're back on Earth in the next episode. But I think people are a little dumb. And I think that is part of what happens when both government and, to a certain extent, I was watching a video from Screen Crush that Ryan Airy put together this week about, and he mentioned something that I hadn't thought about in a while, which is like the design of the part of the ship where Mother is, and how it basically suggests that the way you enter the Mother chamber is sort of entering into like a religious chamber, to suggest to a certain extent that this advanced technology that they've created has kind of replaced God in their universe.
Yeah.
Or at least it has for the working class level people. So they are so reliant on this technology for not just knowledge, but spiritual guidance, I guess, or to whatever extent they can get spiritual guidance on their 65-year fart sniffing mission in space. So, that's something we'll talk about, and we'll come back to Chibuzo. I have thoughts.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do one more Raven here from Phelan. Phelan sent us a nice long one again this week, but I'm only going to do part of it because a sizable chunk of it was about the pan analogs.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to save those for when we get back to Wendy and company, presumably next week. But this part I thought was interesting. Phelan writes, Mrs. Octo wasn't able to hijack, quote unquote, the xenomorph, but I kind of figured that would be the case, considering the acidic blood and lack of eye sockets. But that got me thinking about the defensive evolutionary traits: turtle shells, porcupine quills, toxic frogs. All of those things manifested in response to specific predatory threats. Depending on how loosely they're gripping to the aliens' canon, it almost seems like the xenomorph evolved to defend against that fucking thing. Chilling thought. What threatens a xenomorph? Hilariously, if this is going with a mailbag question that Phelan sent in to our pop culture adventure mailbag last month about what could actually take on a xenomorph. But I think this is an interesting point.
Yeah.
In the sense that, we even talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. What would happen if Mr./Mrs. Octo fought a xenomorph, which does not have eyes? And we get a little bit of that this week. And I think that's kind of a fun twist, especially knowing, as we talked about last week, that these things came from the same solar system. Right. We don't necessarily know that they came from the same moon. Right. Necessarily. But given the proximity of these moons around the same planet, they may have developed alongside each other. So it's, the eye seems to be very much aware of some of these other creatures and may, in fact, be a natural predator to some of them, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, also,
I think it's fun.
The xenomorph could have evolved to defend against the eye, or the eye could have evolved to defend against the xenomorph. The eye has no lungs, from what we can tell. So,
yeah,
and
true.
We know that's how xenos sort of impregnate now. So, in theory, Miss Octo needs a being with an eye, and the aliens need a being with a lung, or a similar such, I don't know, oxygenated. Maybe I guess we're not exactly sure what they're pulling from the lung, but that's what they need.
Well, and it's clear that Octo can inhabit something with a lung, and that thing can die and it can still get away.
Right.
Which is a very, very useful trick against the xenomorph, because then, as we see in this episode with Schmel, like, you could use that body until it's basically Swiss cheese and then still get away, pretty much completely uninjured from the situation, which I think is great. Cause as you mentioned at the top, I'm kind of rooting for the eyeball now.
Yeah.
The eyeball's kind of cool.
I mean, we could talk a little bit more about the eyeball here, because it's like, it's coming up. It's definitely a highlight for me of this episode, but I was really riding a sort of a feeling of what the eyeball had planned as soon as it started knocking on the glass of its container to try to, I guess, here's the question. I am sort of on the side of Mr. Octo, Ms. Octo at this point, because it attacked the xenomorph, and I read the sort of tapping on the glass as a way of maybe warning Chibuzo that the leeches were getting out. But I've seen
100%.
I've seen other people say that it was distracting her so she wouldn't see them coming out. So
no, I definitely think it was trying to warn her.
Okay, good.
Like, it was like a, hey, dumbass.
Hey, that thing's getting out. I can't talk,
like,
have an eye, but
And as they established last week, as Kirsch tells us, this is a highly intelligent species. So I would imagine that this species, especially if it has existed in the same ecosystem as these ticks, understands the threat level of these blood-sucking bugs, and understands that if these things get out and replicate, it is a lot of trouble, right? And they're, especially for creatures with lungs, they become very dangerous, right? And you obviously cannot remove them without dying a horrible, horrible death. So I feel like it was trying to prevent her from letting those things loose. And, she really, as many a scientist in this universe ends up doing, she really sort of walked herself into that one.
Yeah. And then when it finally finds Shmuel and takes him over, or Shmuel, Samuel with the Shmuel at the front, it takes it sort of saves Zavari by tackling her, but seemingly doesn't hurt her, just moves her away from the door. And then when Morrow comes in, Morrow points a gun at it, and it calls the alien, maybe because the gun finds it threatening. And then once Morrow sort of like shocks it and gets out of the room, it attacks the alien by biting it, and then eventually leaving its body and sort of flying at the alien's face. Is all of
almost as if it knows that it needs the humans to survive in this ship, right? Now that it's on the ship, it kind of knows that it needs the humans to get wherever it's going.
Got it. And then eventually off screen, we assume that it finds the cat because that's where we find it when we get back. But I am very interested now in seemingly the change in how we look at this octopus creature. And Neil, have you been listening to the official Alien Earth podcast?
I have not.
This week, because I had an extra day, not only get to watch the episode 2 more times, but I got to listen to that podcast. And one of the interesting things that I found out through that podcast was they shot the first episode, the pilot, essentially, without knowing that this flashback episode existed or what the content of it was. Which is super interesting. So they went back, they shot the first episode, then they went back and shot this, and then also did some inserts to sort of make the first episode's edit meld in with this show. But I do think that it's interesting in terms of how this episode was crafted, that they knew sort of what the contact points they were going to find in the first episode to lead to this crash. They had the whole opening dinner scene sort of planned that we got in episode 1. But beyond that, sort of built this episode 5 around that episode 1 structure. I have a question for you in terms of knowing that it was written that way. Do you think Tang was supposed to be a synthetic, but then they're like, oh, you know what a fun twist would be by the time we get to episode 5 is he's just a creep?
I mean, I'm very confused about Tang because I feel like we don't get an answer either way.
Well, everybody seems to be suggesting that when Morrow says that he's been doing filth, that they mean like actually masturbating, which is something that a synth technically can't do. So that seems to be what it is.
But somebody does call him a robot.
That's true. But also the xenomorph hunts him, which we haven't seen that happen with a full-on synth.
Yeah, that's true as well. So it's and this leads me to a different question that I think is also interesting given the way this was written, is that, we get this as our big flashback episode. Do you think we're done with flashbacks to the Maginot?
I don't know. There are a couple of things. I mean,
I feel like there's some threads dangling.
I feel like there's a lot of threads dangling. Is that something that we're dealing with this season? Would be a question for me. The only reason I would say maybe it's high is I do have more questions about the Maginot, very specifically what happened before this. This episode was very focused on the alien outbreak, the sabotage, and then the crash, which is good and focused, but we discussed some questions I had about the Maginot and the planets it went to in the storm last week, and it doesn't look like we had any indications into that
Right.
outside of Petrovich saying that his partner died because something laid eggs in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And that we didn't see. And we have the idea that we lost some people from episode 1 before we even joined the Maginot. So, like that, those are possibilities of places to go. Are we going to go here this season? The only thing that I think would be maybe yes is you don't have to pay these actors again. The only things maybe no is the questions I have are mostly about people we didn't see this episode. So you could pay entirely new actors that were just, in the cryo tubes. We didn't see them this episode. So
yeah,
I would like some more flashback context, but I do feel what we learned here, this episode, makes me think this season is very specifically Morrow going after Boy Cavalier and Boy Cavalier dealing with the crash. And that's all we're really going to have time to arc out this season. Leaving stuff like Wendy and the Lost Boys and that sort of like consciousness link, whether or not you could create an AI that becomes a human soul, something that we could deal with in future seasons should we be lucky enough to get them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that whether they do it in this season or in like a season 2, there are some questions I would like to have answer. Further questions about the Maginot. Like what is it about that woman that Tang is staring at? Right? Like, is it just that he is? I mean, assuming he's not a synth, that he's just like a perv, or like why does Raheem say leave that poor girl alone? Like, as if something else happened, like this to suggest that maybe something else happened to her before she went into cryo. I think that is a question that I would like to have answered. So I'm curious to see if they will give us any more flashback stuff this season. That would be kind of fun. But as you mentioned, I don't know if we have enough time. We only have a couple more episodes.
That's right.
We got to get back to this Wendy question.
We got to get back to the Earth and figure some stuff out. This episode, also the official podcast, they called, like, in television terms, the Morrow episode, which I think is great. It's our Captain Hook background episode. It does make me honor his intelligence, I think, more than I was before. I always thought his coldness would be a cyborg thing, but the background we get of his life on Earth and his daughter Estelle, where he left and she was just a little girl and they got to spend some time on a beach somewhere, which is great. But then 8 years into his 65-year journey, Estelle died in a fire at age 19, after we learned, for some world building that you have to pause to get to, but that's the modern day of television. She was looking at colleges, and we learned that Weyland-Yutani was paying for the entirety of her school if they went to a Weyland-Yutani sanctioned school. There are still old world colleges, she calls them, such as Harvard, which I imagine are the universities that survived the Trump administration. And then we have this additional thing where she says her friend Corey's dad works for Weyland-Yutani too, but she only gets a partial scholarship. How important are you? So I get from a character standpoint and from this episode's standpoint that Morrow's mission is to get his life's work back to Yutani. I think that's very clear at the ending episode. And then it seems like he has recommitted to this because his family is gone, his home is gone. The reason he was doing this, which is to secure a long, educated life for his daughter, sort of is gone seemingly before they even got any samples. Mission 8 of year 65 is still in travel time, would be my understanding. So, number one, our first important philosophical question of the week: would you dedicate your life to work if your family was dead while you were in space? And 2, is the sort of promise that your daughter is going to have everything paid for if she chooses to stick with the company enough for you to leave in the first place? Do you think Morrow was doing this just for his daughter? Do you think something else happened on Earth to make him think he needed to get out?
Well, I think there would need to be some additional circumstances that would make me want to do something like this. So I think, yeah, one, for Morrow, it is the fact that he knows his daughter is going to be taken care of. But I think the another very important piece is the thing we learn right at the end of the episode, which is that Yutani's grandmother, the one that he knew before leaving, basically pulled him out of what sounded like a pretty rough life, living on the streets, having a palsied arm. And, she basically took him in, it sounds like, and obviously gave him his cyborg parts. And that created a situation where he was indebted to her. And in probably more than just an emotional way, right? As we saw last week with Joe being told that they could bill him for his new lung, where it was like he probably owed Yutani a lifetime contract at that point. But it also seems like he had some kind of emotional connection to old lady Yutani, I guess we could call her at this point, because she basically rescued him from a horrible life, and he became a very pivotal part of her organization, to the point where she seems to have, even though he wasn't the captain of this ship, she basically charged him with making sure that this mission is brought to success and that these specimens are brought back. So I think that, the question that his daughter asks in that letter, how important are you? He was very important to Grandma Yutani. And I think that is the additional circumstance that would make him feel obligated to go on a mission like this, but also give him the confidence that his daughter would be taken care of. I do wonder if we're going to learn more about his daughter. Like, who was his daughter's mother, right?
Yeah.
Because you would imagine that his daughter came along after he met Yutani, right? After he was taken off the streets and given his new life. So I just kind of wonder.
Well, in the last communication he has with her, well, first of all, no body, no death is the TV rule. And why would we trust a company dispatch that your daughter and your home burned to death?
She could be perfectly alive and in cryo sleep and still 19 years old, for all we know.
Yeah. And also, additionally, the mother question is very interesting, especially in this entire series where we are keeping questions of like reproduction, making humans, all these things in the back of the mind. I am wondering.
Also, if we're going to entertain theories about Boy Cavalier maybe being a secret Weyland, why can't Morrow's daughter be a secret Yutani?
Ooh. Oh, I mean, that's an interesting bloodline mixing. All I'm sure is I get it. I buy this character. It is I'm much more emotionally bonded to him at this point as an antagonist, to the point where I would love to see a Weyland-Yutani antagonist civil war where what does David think of Morrow and vice versa, where one's like fuck Weyland and Morrow's like yes I agree, fuck Weyland, let's go, and Yutani dominance rules. I can't wait to see where this goes. I am very thrilled with the addition of this backstory, and We'll Meet Again being the song that he and his daughter share, same one from good old Dr. Strangelove. Weird personal aside, there's a miniature golf course here in Colorado called Adventure Golf that I used to go to a lot as a youth, and they had one of their courses was you crashed in a Indiana Jones jungle temple setting, and one of the holes had 3 singing skulls that would sing a series of songs, and one of them is We'll Meet Again. And from being on that course while waiting for entire large parties to play that hole, I think I've heard that song thousands of times, sung to me through animatronic skulls. So shout out Adventure Golf for my music education.
And now you've heard it from a TV cyborg.
And now I've heard it from a TV cyborg, and it makes me think maybe he will see his daughter again, and I don't know.
Sure. Well, and I think in the context of this episode, you could be forgiven for just writing it off as like he thinks he's about to die potentially. So he's like, we'll meet again in the next life.
Right.
But it's never that simple.
In
a good mystery box-ish prestige TV show, it's never that simple.
I like this. I like the use of the anchoring tune. I'm kind of glad we never did this with Ripley and You Are My Lucky Star, the song she sung at the end. But I do appreciate it having meaning for Morrow because I've seen Dr. Strangelove play that song over a nuclear bomb blowing up the island at the end of the series, and I'll be like, hey, Morrow did get to meet his daughter again or something. It'll be fun to see how that turns out. But great needle drop. Obviously, there's one at the end, but we're not there yet. We're just scratching the surface. While we are still on sort of the thrust, Neil, how do you feel about the plot-based twist that the saboteur was caused or motivated by Boy Cavalier making a promise we know he can't keep, which is to put an adult brain into a synth body? But it's been Boy Cavalier up and down. How did you feel that execution went?
Well, it's a promise we think we know he can't keep, right? Except for the light theorizing that we've done around maybe Boy Cavalier is not entirely organic himself. But I think it's clear in the context of the conversation he's having with Petrovich that he never intended for Petrovich to make it back alive and get a new body. He was just manipulating this working class dude and using his frustrations with Weyland-Yutani, his employer, against him to create a saboteur, to create someone to be mutinous. When it first happened, I was like, oh, that feels obvious, right? Like if I had not necessarily considered that there was someone pulling the strings of the saboteur, but had I started to consider that, I think Boy Cavalier is like the most obvious choice. But it also suggests that, that he knows a lot more about what Yutani was doing on LV-426. And I'm curious as to how that came to be. Right. This, I think, even pushes further into like the secret Weyland territory, which is like Boy Cavalier is not more than 65 years old.
Right.
So like, how does he know what this mission's goal was?
I think that's
right.
Yeah.
Because this was launched way before he was alive. So either he learned it through some sort of corporate espionage, or he has more connectivity to Weyland-Yutani than he is letting on. And this also sort of blows open this idea that the show is definitely hiding stuff from us. The show is not afraid to actively lie to us,
right?
Especially when it comes to Boy Cavalier. So anything is possible at this point, right? Because the way they set him up in the first couple episodes is, that he feels he's surprised. He wants what's on that ship only after learning that it is a bunch of scientific specimens, and he seems a little bit caught off guard by the whole thing. But in reality, he knew that it was all coming. So, and the other thing that I find interesting about this is that even though we do kind of learn more about what happened on the Maginot, I feel like this is maybe the only useful plot information we get from this episode that will be very important going forward, right? Because we already knew that Morrow was like hardcore anti-Boy Cavalier, right? That he was coming for him. And this does give us more context for how tied to Yutani he is and how loyal he is to Yutani. But I think that, this Boy Cavalier stuff is maybe the most important thing, like just like plot information that we get from this episode. The rest of it is kind of just the general atmosphere of what befell the poor souls on the Maginot.
I agree. That's probably it. I would say not necessarily like straight plot, but I would say this episode also exists to nudge us a little further on these alien species that aren't the xenomorph, to be like, I know by the nature of the franchise, you think the xenomorph is the most dangerous thing on the Neverland Island right now, but here's what they're up against.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me because just by the nature of the Alien franchise / how these sci-fi stories usually go, like the hubris of man does nothing in the face of technology and nature. But now I'm like kind of on nature's side and a robot's side, and humanity's not even close to like who I want to see benefit from this. To go back to what you were saying about useful plot information, yes, this really helps me with my previous confusion about how Prodigy probably didn't exist when these guys launched, but now they all know that Prodigy exists. It's because there's been communications, which is good to know. But also, if there's been communications, that thing that you're talking about, which at some point somebody needed to tell Boy Cavalier about this mission at some period of time, at least, I don't know, 17 days minimum, 18 days minimum from their return to Earth. And he did have most of the idea of a plan. He was definitely able to, blackmail Petrovich.
Yeah. I was looking very closely at the scene. The second time I went through the episode, the scene where Morrow's watching the call between Boy Cavalier and Petrovich for like a date, like a timestamp on the video, but I could not find one. I was like, what year did that conversation take place? Because he's reviewing all of these communication files that could have taken place anytime over the last 65 years. So that could have been a conversation from a few weeks ago, or it could have been a conversation from several years ago. We don't really know, especially if Boy Cavalier is a hybrid that doesn't age.
I will say this brings the chances for me. The odds are higher for me now that we get a Boy Cavalier Morrow showdown by the end of the season, because you got to Captain Hook and Peter Pan that up, and making them such big counterpoints to each other plot wise with this episode. That's what we're
going to need the crocodile to be there as well.
Oh yeah, that seems likely. Let's see who needs a union this week. I have a little bit off topic here, but all this talk of shares, when Malachite gets a 16th of his share knocked off, I was like, I haven't given a lot of thoughts to shares since the first Alien, and the first Alien, like 45 minutes in, there's a chest burster, and I stopped thinking about shares. So at first I was like, these are shares in the company, because that's to counteract any sort of economic struggle that happens and however large this net is. But if you're asleep for a couple of years, the value of your money is going to go up and down. So I thought initially this were shares of Weyland-Yutani. But then I found a very helpful Reddit post from somebody who watches a lot of deep sea fishermen. This is actually more of like a fishing shares thing, which are you're competing for shares of the haul when you get back, the value of the haul. So that still is sort of inflation proof, but is also dependent on when you get back, they subtract the resources it took to get there and back. So all of these people aren't going to want to use a lot of their resources, and should probably be a little bit more concerned that they have no fuel than they are, I think, because that will be like taken out of their shares. And then also if you like shave off a 16th share, that goes right back to the company. So Dave learned about share fishing this week because I thought it was about stocks, but it wasn't. It is about a share. So before we get to your observation about scientists, how do you think you calculate how much that ship is worth?
Well, it's interesting too, because I also, I guess, didn't assume that it was shares of the company. I always thought about it more in the context of like, pirate ships.
Oh yeah, like shares of the booty.
You've watched Black Sails.
Yeah.
But in pirate ships, it's more of a socialist situation where like the ship splits it amongst the crew. And they share it. But this is more of a corporate controlled situation where the company is divvying out the shares and deciding who gets what. So it's less equitable, I guess. But yeah, I mean, when I heard shares, it's like shares of the ultimate take at the end. And it's funny because as we were watching, I was watching with my friend Theo, who's a massive Alien franchise fan, even more so than myself. And he, as they're doing this conversation about shares, he just turns to me and goes, "Has anyone ever gotten a share from Weyland-Yutani?" And I'm like, you know what? You got an interesting point there, bud. Because I don't think we've ever seen anyone get a share, right? Because Weyland-Yutani sends out, at least from what we've seen, these various crews, the Nostromo, the Maginot, and they go and they collect these samples and everybody dies.
I will say maybe Ripley in Aliens got a share. She got an apartment.
Okay.
She, it looks like she was setting up her life before she's convinced to go back.
Okay, so maybe Ripley is unique in the fact that she's like the only one, because she's the sole survivor of the Nostromo. So.
Well, that being said, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm forgetting something about the extended cut or some other thing, because they would absolutely charge her for the Nostromo. She blew it up. So like Brittany's share would be negated by the loss of the company property.
Yeah, she actually got billed for the Nostromo.
Yeah, as far as
that's why they ultimately had to make her go
as
back.
far as we know, like maybe that's why her apartment's so small, is because she is still paying off the company for the Nostromo.
So maybe that's why they're not concerned about the fuel, because they deep down in their souls they know that no one ever gets a share.
No one ever gets a share. Your bank account is your promised shares. They've switched what the currency is. Everybody's just a number of shares.
Yeah, and I wonder how that calculates out, right? Because Schmel, when they're talking, when the two engineers are they're doing their work and they're talking about the shares, he's like, 65 years of your life for a quarter share. I wonder what a quarter share ultimately means. And I know they don't live in a moneyless, space communist society like Star Trek at this point. But I do wonder if, because these corporations have such totalitarian control over their territories, if they do kind of live in what would otherwise be to us kind of like a moneyless society, where it's like the company issues you company credits to live your life instead of you earning money per se in the way that we understand it. And I wonder if that I wonder if that prevents people, because you see a situation where these corporations take over parts of the world. If you live in Weyland-Yutani territory and you only have Weyland-Yutani credits to live your life out of, maybe you can't go live in a Prodigy territory. You can't even go visit a Prodigy territory because your credits aren't good there, right? Because they're not worth the same thing. I'm kind of curious as to how the economics of Earth work in that way. And if that's a further way that these companies control people's movements and their sort of upward mobility. But yeah, I think, It seems silly in hindsight that anyone is arguing over shares, because
no one's getting those shares.
No one's getting a share on these ships.
We also, I guess, need some cargo to successfully get her back before a share. Actually,
the other thing that I was thinking, and this is something that comes up when thinking about like pirate ships or sailing companies and like the economics of nautical transport, is I do wonder if these companies also take out insurance policies on these employees, so that when they all die, that like Weyland-Yutani can cash in an insurance policy and further profit off of the dead employees.
That would be possible. I mean, they might also be
fits.
paying the insurance, because like which one of the five is the insurance five? That's what we should really learn.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe one of the five, maybe it's the one that has the moon. That's their whole thing, is they're just an insurance racket, hyper-capitalist insurance racket. That would make sense.
Let's talk about some other creatures that we saw. Well, actually, we already talked about Ms. Octo. And
sure. Well, no, we need to talk about the scientists.
We do. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, continue.
Yeah. Speaking
I got
speaking
wrapped
of
up in share talk.
uninsurable, speaking of uninsurable elements of the business, I would like to talk about why the scientists need a union, because we need to have a serious conversation and reflect very thoughtfully about workplace safety standards. Because finally, Alien Earth has given has given me a bit of story that has me coming around on what I would say were the sort of dumbest criticisms of Prometheus, which was, I can't believe these scientists are so dumb. Why do they keep taking their helmets off? But maybe it's just a Weyland-Yutani scientist thing. Maybe their scientist training program is just awful, because I would say 5 minutes into spending time with Chibuzo, who otherwise seems like a nice person. Seems to have a lot of anxiety, especially around smoking.
Mm-hmm.
She's not good at workplace safety standards, right? She is eating around her in the lab, which is problematic for so many reasons, not just with the potential of like her specimens contaminating the food that she is eating, which is, I would say, a big one.
Yeah.
Obviously, but also like her food contaminating her experiments, and maybe like, how does she know that whatever kind of sandwich she's eating, let's just say it's like a peanut butter and jelly. How does she know that peanut butter isn't lethal to one of those species? Right? Like, how does she know that the fucking Mr. Octo doesn't have a peanut allergy and like could immediately kill him and ruin 65 years worth of travel because she wanted to eat in the middle of her lab instead of eating in the designated eating area? I think that, the Weyland, specifically the Weyland scientists, have a very, very bad track record when it comes to workplace safety and being sanitary. And, honestly, I feel very bad for the kid in engineering who ends up getting the worst of it.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of deserved to have then again, she also gets it pretty bad because of her decisions. But, again, like I said at the top, this is why I have a water bottle with a lid that immediately closes and it's never open, because I don't want anything crawling in there.
I think we could also now just begin to say maybe the science of this world has deteriorated over decades and decades of limited access to company-only universities.
Well, yeah. And it goes to the discussion we were having earlier, which is like, are people actually dumber because they are more reliant on technology? I think this goes to it as well. Like, these scientists are not this. And listen, this isn't the Nostromo. The Nostromo they're truckers,
yeah,
right? They're not scientists. This is a expeditionary vessel that is supposed to be out there for this purpose, to gather and secure these specimens. So like, the notion that she is putting Mr. Octo up on the little thing and not verifying that it's locked in
mm-hmm.
is insane, right? Especially after she mentioned it like 2 minutes ago, that we got to make sure that the lights are all green, that she just very carelessly does not double check, or that she's eating right next to an experiment where she's feeding what we now know are maybe the most dangerous thing on the ship. So it's like, yeah, I think that there is a serious competency issue when it comes to the science team, and it's very frustrating because they're supposed to be good at this, and they've been out there for 65 years, and on top of that, they successfully went and captured these things in the first place. And they've mentioned that they've lost a lot of people. So it's not like they are unaware of the dangers presented by these specimens. It's this, so it makes it, it's a little silly, but I think it's not silly in a way that makes me go, this is a TV show being a little too extra with how dumb its characters are. It feels of a piece or at least on brand for Weyland science crews to not be very attentive.
Yeah.
And, walk themselves into the most horrible situations because maybe they're just poorly trained. Maybe that's part of the company's thing is like, in order to save money, again, this is a very understandable in the sense of like understanding what a hyper capitalist like end stage profit seeking model would look like, which is like, not only were we hiring expendable people, but we're not really training them to be like
because they're expendable. You'll just have somebody else.
Because we don't care if they die. Yeah. So, like Raheem, the medic, it's like, we don't care that we hired a guy who's maybe a junkie and is going to smoke while doing surgery because it doesn't matter if he doesn't make it back. And it doesn't matter if the engineering kid doesn't make it back either, because the company's just going to cash in an insurance policy, recoup his share. And, we'll still get what we need out of it as long as Morrow does his job,
I love your take on a spaceship horror episode, but yes, capitalism's fucked our science. I agree with that in this story worlds 100%. All right, back to creatures. We talked about Ms. Octo. We talked a little bit about the xenomorphs. I did want to bring up, we learned that the xenos apparently emit some sort of gamma radiation is a new piece of lore that we learned. And this did lead me, actually this whole episode led me to a question from episode 2, which is, how did that clutch of eggs that we knew as the omelet get to be just on the floor? And how did it develop that sort of misty laser barrier above it if that was not part of the Maginot's scientific setup? So it having some sort of weird radiation thing was actually, I always assumed that the laser grid on the mist on top of the eggs was about the engineers monitoring if any of the facehugger eggs opened up, because we've seen the eggs open up near a human when it just senses it. It doesn't need any sort of barrier. But to sort of loop back what we were talking about in Phelan's email, if we think about all these species together, if the eggs, as soon as they are like forming a nest-like structure, obviously we saw the Olympian xenomorph web up Joe as if he was cocooning him, which is different than any of the encounters the Olympian has on the Maginot. That maybe the eggs sort of in a nest structure develop this mist to prevent itself from predators. So Phelan asked, is there anything the xenomorph is afraid of? And my answer would be like, sort of no, because a full-grown xenomorph's whole purpose is to kind of just attack without like a lot of strategy. Strategy seems to be a way mostly to ensure the survival of the hive, not necessarily of itself. But it probably would be, like the queen is in Aliens, sensitive to attacks on its young. So maybe whatever a xenomorph is afraid of is whatever is most damaging to the eggs is whatever that mist is sort of protecting against. Or if they're just like, oh, there's an eye here, I better make some mist to protect the eggs, and so those eyes don't get into the eggs.
Sure.
I got lots of...
Well, and maybe that, because the height of the mist is sort of right above where the eye's level would be.
Right.
So it's like, it would detect if the eye started crawling up one of the eggs.
So I'm thinking maybe that makes a little bit more sense. But in terms of like the xeno gamma radiation, it will be interesting to see if they use that beyond something like making a tracker, making like a, instead of a motion tracker like Aliens, there's a gamma tracker. So you hear some clicks, like a good old nuclear site. And then still nothing from the Wasp. We get to see it in the cage.
Creature number 5, still a mystery.
Creature number 5. I filed the something like eggs in Petrovich's partner's eyes under the Wasp just because We haven't seen how that one reproduces. I guess we also haven't seen how Miss Octo reproduces, and that technically could be an egg creature.
Yeah, and the ticks, the bloodsucker guys, we can note that like it sort of is attracted to the water as a way to reproduce. And what are human eyes?
True.
They are water. So I think that it's possible it's that as well. The other thing that I clocked, I mentioned that the wasp or the fly or whatever we're going to call it is creature number 5, because we heard Morrow say it in the trailer, like 5 species of monsters. But Chibuzo, when talking about the ticks or the worm-like creatures, calls them species 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there are a lot of suggestions in this episode that there might be a whole lot more going on this ship than what Prodigy found.
Stay tuned for the storm.
Because it's like, not only are there more of each of these creatures potentially, but there might just be more creatures, And I think that that's something that you just leave open for future seasons.
Yeah, there's a bunch of species that have me questioning, and like the numbers on the cases too don't seem to line up with like 5 species. So I can't wait to see if there is something else being hidden with us. I definitely think there has to be, like, they are obscuring. Nobody says specifically how many eggs or how many facehuggers they have. They have that facehugger dead in formaldehyde, but also when the facehugger gets the captain before this episode actually starts, they seem to not know what it is because they try to cut through the tail. And like we see the cage to 1 egg is opened. At least, but there are 2 face huggers. So just like, how many eggs are these things? Am I supposed to be looking for a queen? I have all sorts of questions.
Also,
like
we
that.
see 2 face huggers attack the captain and Bronski on the video, but we don't see what creates the hole in the floor.
I think that's where they
Morrow
tried
to
cut the. So when we see the captain, the doctors,
like Raheem did the cut.
Because the med bed's like fine, but he did it in the room while where they found the body.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then we should talk about the ticks. Raven, we got a Raven that said, one more thing, there were a lot of ticks still crawling around that operating room after it got gassed. I could see a pandemic wiping out New Siam. There was 2 of them, I think, made it into the bodies of Petrovich and Clem. We see definitely one climb in Clem's head, but then I believe when they're going through the Maginot in episode 2, they find 2 sort of like petrified bodies, which would say that they also got to Petrovich. But it does seem like maybe there will be more ticks around the crash site than maybe we brought back.
Lots more ticks.
If that happens, if they get close to some New Siam water, do you think it's possible that we do all of this for there to be a tick outbreak in New Siam?
Oh, absolutely. That was my first thought, was R.I.P. New Siam. And then it was reinforced to a certain extent by, looking at the trailer, which we'll talk about in the storm for next week. But I didn't think that we were going to go back to the city. But there are definitely shots in the trailer of them flying back toward the city for something, like Prodigy ships flying back from Neverland to the city. So I think that the potential for not only like a tick outbreak, but realizing that there are more creatures on the ship that are now spreading out throughout the city is very much in play. Like, I think we maybe assumed that they died in the crash, anything else that was loose. But as we've seen now, especially about these ticks, they got all kinds of survival techniques. Like, they are very, very difficult to kill.
Yeah.
And we don't know necessarily what the purpose is of them sucking out blood and turning it into a giant bag, but we definitely know that once they get their babies inside of someone, they're very hard to kill.
Yeah. Which is good. It was good to get an answer about what happened in the esophagus. It's terrifying that it's a bunch of ticks. But it's also nice to see that these things are not maybe as easy to kill as maybe would think. They seem like when they're crawling around like they're little squishy things, but then we see that they could expel a neurotoxin if you mess with them while they're attached. A much crazier sort of species they were thinking.
And also when Rahim walks into the lab and sees the thing in the sandwich and goes to pick it up, he kind of makes this offhand remark about how strong they are. He's like, oh, they're really strong, as he's like picking it up, as if they're much stronger than they look. So these things are really interesting.
And smarter.
As disappointed as I was that we didn't get any new information about the creatures we haven't seen, I am very fascinated by the new information we got for the ticks. They are fascinating.
And then while we're talking about xenomorph facts, we do learn by what happens to the smoking guy who Bronsky, who was having an affair with Zavari. They put him in cryostasis, but that does not stop the face hugger. So my question to you is, does that mean Burke from Aliens was absolutely screwed because he went to LV-427 to get the face huggers to impregnate Newt and Ripley, and then he was going to sabotage all the other cryo chambers and just fly them home, but apparently that wouldn't have mattered. So Burke, you were screwed to begin with. If you can't cryo freeze aliens, this is a lot more difficult than we thought, is to get them back to Earth.
Also, how do they know that they can survive in the vacuum of space? Like, how did that knowledge come to be? Like the Maginot. Like, that's the flashback I want, which is like, how do they know that you can't kill the face hugger in the vacuum of space? Did they like throw one out there and see what happened? Like,
they've got a dead face hugger from something, so they know some stuff about it. Bunch of questions, bunch of backdoor questions.
But I guess this is something we also kind of knew, right? Because having rewatched the original Alien, it isn't at the end. It isn't Ripley blowing it out the airlock, the xenomorph out the airlock that kills it. It's the jet. It's the engine that she fires.
Well,
up.
I know from watching Alien Romulus, she didn't kill that thing at all.
Yeah, so like, you know,
it cocooned itself,
but it definitely
in space.
Wasn't just the vacuum of space.
Yeah,
that would have killed it.
It is odd to see that. I guess so. In all future versions of Alien, unless this plot goes by the wayside for plot, or unless this bit of world building goes by the wayside for future plot reasons, is if the face hugger is attached to somebody, you cannot put the alien in traditional stasis. You could stop the human, but the alien keeps gestating. So it's just like, I don't know, icing a meal. It's going to be weird to see if that changes things in the future. And then we have a whole bunch of different other notes and stuff that we noticed. We're going a little long, and we still have stuff to talk about in the storm, but I do want to bring up some stuff. Which is, this episode is pretty well edited. Like I got to watch it 2 more times than I usually did because we did the podcast a day later. But especially knowing that Petrovich is the saboteur, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can use to make his version of the plot where he's crawling around the ship and hiding make more sense, especially when they choose to show the med bays. They sort of use this creepy plot line of Tang obsessing over the women to show the med bays where Petrovich is either there or not there a lot. So if you want to go back and watch it, when Morrow sees the security footage of the saboteur and he's like, which one or who could it be? Before we know that somebody's faking being in cryostasis, we cut to Tang standing near the girl he's obsessing over, and Petrovich is not in his cryopod. So I was like, way to have an internal logic. And that sort of internal logic is why I could ask questions like, is there an alien on here? Or what do they know about facehuggers? Because if you're doing this level of detail, I'm going to assume that there aren't mistakes in the background. In terms of being a TV watcher.
Yeah, this is a very meticulously crafted show, which I like.
Yeah.
You know, it's a show that is feeding the itch for the screenshot champions among us.
And then Neil, you've got some other notes here that I'm guessing your split diopter alert is the scene where Zavari is around the corner and the alien's in the hallway, sort of leaning out.
That one, and then when she's in the mother room, we get a split diopter.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is great. Which is for anyone not familiar with what a split diopter is, and this. I don't know if they did this practically or because you can do it digitally now with current camera models, but split diopter is actually a thing that you put on the lens that basically smudges the middle of the lens in a way that puts the foreground and the background in focus at the same time on the two halves of the screen. So when we get that close up of Zavari sitting in the mother room where her face is close up on the left and then the screen behind her is also close up and in focus on the right. That is a split diopter, and it's just, it's a cool filmmaking technique that I want to say has existed in across many different points of the franchise and is just a cool classic filmmaking thing that they throw in there. So I wonder if they did it because you used to be able to do it just by like putting like Vaseline on the lens. And or they have like special filters that you can do it, but I would assume that they just did it digitally here, but it looks great. But yeah, and then I think there's one in the hallway when the xenomorph is tracking her, so it's just kind of fun. It turns me into the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme every time I see it. So that's great, and again adds to the feeling, I think, that this is Noah Hawley's alien movie that he got to just make in the middle of his show, which, creatively must have been very fulfilling for him, right? I mean, getting to do an alien show in the first place, if you're a fan of the originals, is, I assume, a massive honor, but being able to then direct your own mini alien movie in the middle of it is a sort of the height of nerdiness when it comes to making sci-fi. So yeah, it's great stuff. I think they did a really great job of capturing that same atmosphere. There's definitely things that are different, like about this crew, right? I feel like, obviously their mission is different. They're not, and yet they somehow seem even less capable of dealing with it than the Nostromo. But that I think is still part of the design, the corporate design of Weyland-Yutani at work here. So, but yeah, love the split diopter.
Yeah. And then you got some questions about the final scene before we get to our music outro. What did you make of Morrow's visit with Yutani?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, I love the design of that room, and I love her like honor guard that look like the Praetorians from The Last Jedi.
Or the Imperial Guards from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. It's just very, very Imperial Guard coded. Very cool. I was wondering, what would your theory be as to what city that is, knowing that Weyland-Yutani has North and South America? So I guess my first assumption would be like that's New York in the future. But I don't know if the coastlines have lasted that long. Right.
I would go with something like Rio.
Okay.
It's like a redeveloped like South America city. That would be my.
It's so
my
high that you don't really see any recognizable architecture because of the cloud cover. So I am curious as to whether we'll ever get that information. But that does look like whatever city that is, that's like Weyland-Yutani capital, which I think is kind of cool. I would love to know what that is. And then I have tons of questions about what Morrow needs.
Yeah.
Like, what does he want? Is it a Space SEAL Team 6 situation where he needs soldiers that are going to help him infiltrate the island quietly? Does he need a battalion of space marines to do? I mean, do I want
Earth
a battle
Marines
episode on this island? Maybe. Or does he just need some sort of technological advantage so that he can get in alone? Because I assume that he wants to get into the island so that he can have this confrontation with Boy Cavalier.
Well, I think he get Slightly's delivery.
Yeah, so he can get Slightly's delivery. And it's a question of like, now that we know that Yutani will give him whatever he needs, and we know that Weyland-Yutani has seemingly unlimited resources, how does that manifest? You know, what exactly does he think he needs in order to recapture these specimens? And I assume that the end of that, like the ultimate result of that, is that this island and the people on it are not going to survive.
Right.
He's going to get the specimens and then everybody dies.
Everybody who knows about the specimen needs to die. That's what we've learned.
Yeah, which is complicated if there are specimens loose in New Siam, because then all of New Siam needs to die too.
Very, very true.
Which, you know, nuking entire cities to cover up alien incursions is on brand for this franchise, as well, as we've discussed.
Possibly happened before, maybe in the state of Colorado. We don't know for sure.
Yep. My one other note, Dave, is that I did find it funny that even 100 years into the future, British people still can't handle spicy things.
Mm-hmm. And it kills them. Kills them now.
It literally leads to his death.
Well, then
poor kid.
Before we head out of the episode, we have our closing hard rock corner. It is Cherub Rock by Smashing Pumpkins. It's pretty cool. It's a song about posers, but I mostly remember it because I was a young bass player gigging with one of the older bands in high school. So I was like a freshman and these were like juniors. Mm-hmm. And we were just sort of like figuring out Louisville, Colorado, a lot of the bands played together. Bands would break up and reassemble into new bands. So I was playing bass with one of these guys and had not heard Cherub Rock yet. I don't know how I went through middle school without hearing Cherub Rock, or maybe I did. I had forgotten it. Either way, maybe I just wasn't in the right place for it. The guitarist I was practicing with started playing Cherub Rock, and the drummer obviously knew it and started picking it up. And I was like, oh no, maybe everybody's just picking up this like improvised jam. So I just started playing my E string. It's the bottom string on the bass. And you know what? The Cherub Rock intro is just E for the bass the entire time.
You guessed right.
Yeah, so it was like a full 45 seconds before the key change, and I was like, we are improvising a hit song right now. Like, I have been like, this must be what being in a real band's like. And then once I realized the key changes were wrong, I'm like, what key is this? They're like, it's Cherub Rock. And I was like, oh yes, of course. And then, went home and listened to some more Smashing Pumpkins.
For a moment, you were the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, for a moment, I was the Smashing Pumpkins. So when it started here, I was like, oh, hey, that song my band made up that one time. But can't wait to see what happens. We have some idea because we have seen a teaser for next week's episode. If you would like to hear our speculation, join us in the storm.
I am the storm, brother. First storm and the last.
And we're back in the storm. Neil, it looks like next week, not only are we back on Earth, but the episode title is The Fly. I had a lot of thoughts going into this. Like, is it The Fly, like we're doing a Cronenberg thing? Is it like body transformation? But then they did let slip on the official Alien Earth podcast. They were talking about the creatures. They're like The Fly. Well, I guess we don't name that one for a while. So I think next week's episode is The Fly because it's named after the Wasp that we get to see. It's going to do something.
Finally.
Yeah.
Finally, we get to know what this one is all about. And, it sets a high bar of expectation, at least for me. It's like, all right, you set me up with the trailer, the series trailer telling me that there are 5 dangerous creatures that I need to be paying attention to. You have explained, for the most part, 4 of them. This fifth one better be a home run as well.
I like that you said that they've explained the plant. I don't. I think they've explained three of them.
They've at least shown us some of what the plant does, right?
Yeah, Chekhov's plant is still around.
We know that it's there. We kind of know that it's willing to defend itself with its little tentacle thing. We don't really know much beyond that, but like at least it's gotten some screen time and some motion. This fly has been in its cage slamming up against the glass. We don't really know what else to make of it. And I would say the plant aside, we've gotten a lot of really interesting information about all the other ones, right? I mean, we knew plenty about the life cycle of a xenomorph at this point, but like the eyeball is fascinating to the point where I think we're kind of on its side at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the ticks are now probably the scariest thing. I think
they're definitely tiny and will suck all your blood from you the inside.
They are the thing that will kill you the quickest, I would say, right? Because even like depending on how you encounter the xenomorph, if the xenomorph is hunting you in order to capture you and replicate you, you don't die immediately. Like what happens to Joe? He just webs you up and you have to wait for an egg to face hug you.
Right.
So at least you're not dying right away. But if one of these tick things gets a hold of you, you're going to die very quickly, no matter what.
Yeah.
So they're very scary. So it'll be interesting to see what this fly is all about. And especially considering that we have 3 episodes left.
You think it's going to lay eggs in someone's eyes?
Maybe.
There are wasps that do that sort of thing.
I mean, I do think that there is a lot of potential for, especially if Slightly is going to put his plan into some kind of plan into action to get a face hugger out and onto one of the human characters. The potential that causes enough chaos to let the other creatures loose in that lab is pretty high.
So also in the teaser, we see a shot of the alien eggs and a sort of indicator turning to red, which I think would be Slightly or somebody opening the cage to get into the eggs. And I would say it is Slightly because we do see a face hugger grab somebody. They've carefully edited it so I can't tell who it is. It could still be Joe. He is wearing a similar shirt to the person who gets face hugged in the trailer when he's talking to Wendy. And he says to Wendy, like, I'd get you out of here. And Wendy's like, what if I don't want to leave? So it does look like the face hugger plan is at least going to start next week. I don't know how deep we're going to get into it.
And again, just to reiterate my general theory, I would not put it past Kirsch to be involved in this.
Yeah, because he knows about it.
From a scientific standpoint, he might be curious to see what happens, but also, again, because he knows about this plan with Slightly, because he's a little antagonistic with Boy Cavalier, or if, let's say, because, they know what they can see through Wendy's eyes, presumably. If they know that this conversation with Joe happens, maybe Boy Cavalier tells Kirsch, like, all right, Joe is an experiment now.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hit him with a face hugger.
We'll see how it goes. We also see that Nibs gets scanned while she's, I guess, powered down or asleep in one of the head things. And then we see Adam sort of yelling at the scientists about how they've gone too far and they need to, they need to go further. So that appears like, even though it is intercut with more species things, to be more around some sort of breakthrough with Nibs's level 3 emergency, whatever that was declared last week.
I assume that's the glitch that Dame Sylvia mentions in this trailer.
Yes.
Is whatever's happening with Nibs is what they would see as a glitch.
Seems like it. And then we get some shots of Wendy interacting with the new xenomorph, which we haven't named yet. Hopefully he does enough next week to see name. But we see him grow throughout pretty rapidly throughout the teaser even. But when she's first communicating with it, it's now in a cage. It is about the size of the Covenant David's like ultimate xenomorph burster. It's about that size. It's like
Sure.
the size of a small dog.
It's kind of cute.
It is kind of cute. But also in the actual teaser, when she's getting close to it, sort of slams up against the glass. So it looks like maybe it's not constantly as friendly with Wendy as initially could have been. I don't know. We'll have to see if she's able to chitter at it and understand it this time.
Do you think that Wendy lets it out?
Do I think that Wendy lets it out?
Because we know this thing's going to get out.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's as simple as it's just going to escape, because, that's, I think, a little too easy. And that's kind of how a lot of the creatures have escaped so far. I think that something's going to have, all right, hear me out. Let's say that Boy Cavalier does, Joe tries to get Wendy to leave the island.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to go because
Right.
she now has her little xenomorph baby that she wants to take care of. And she's obviously very invested in seeing how this all goes now that she can communicate to a certain extent. Boy Cavalier decides that Joe is now experiment fodder. Joe gets hit with a face hugger. Maybe doesn't die right away, at least in this episode. And Wendy turns on Prodigy. And she decides that maybe letting the xenomorph out is a good idea. Maybe I need a friend who can help me defeat the company on this island. Maybe she's going to engage in some collective action with the xenomorph. I think that's entirely possible.
I also think that's possible. I just I'm wondering how much she can communicate with the xenomorph, or if they're even a team when that happens, or if she just decides to do it like you're saying is like a chaos agent move. Because there is a world, we've talked about it. We talked about it in our preview podcast, and maybe this is a good time to talk about the Raven from John.
Yeah.
Neil, what do you got for us?
All right. So this came from John, and this I think goes to what we're talking about here, which is John says, to be brief, in the Alien comics, there is a goddess-like figure that lurks in the shadows behind the xenomorphs. It's a sort of cosmic horror angle that adds intelligence to the Xenos. Spoiler, a woman infected by the black goo starts to transform into this figure, becoming a sort of mother to the species. I wouldn't be surprised if Wendy slowly becomes entwined with the xenomorph race in the same way. How else does Noah plan to continue the story over multiple seasons, as he stated? In the same series, they also have other species mutated by the black goo. Man, someone needs to ask Noah if the comics were any inspiration. And then he gives us a link to the comic, which is
Alien Bloodline, I think it is.
Alien Bloodline, and the character is the Woman in the Dark.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of alien-human hybrid goddess. And I feel like we've been sort of touching around this idea that maybe Wendy, now that she can communicate, would align herself with the xenomorph. But I don't know if we've taken it this far just yet in what we've considered, which is this idea that, especially if we're taking the Peter Pan metaphor to its logical conclusion, and Wendy and some of the Lost Boys are the ones who escaped the island without Peter and Captain Hook and the crocodile. Does Wendy need the xenomorph power?
Yeah.
In order to make that happen? And is that would be a way in which I could see Wendy being able to overcome both Boy Cavalier and Morrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because Morrow is going to show up with whatever resources he needs from Yutani. Boy Cavalier has all the resources of Prodigy. Wendy is at a significant disadvantage unless she's got a xenomorph.
Yeah. Or she seems to have a disadvantage because as far as we know, she's still the only one who could hear them. So I want to know what makes Wendy special. And if it is something that's especially xenomorph based, is it replicable? Because I think Wendy can become the Woman in the Dark and that would be interesting, and that would be an interesting long plot line. But she kind of needs to be the only person who could do that for that to make story sense. Otherwise, why wouldn't all the corporations of the world spend the next couple thousand years trying to create a person to control the xenomorph? They like all the other Alien franchise stuff is people trying to control the xenomorphs. If they figure out a way that's replicable here, then everybody, like, no one makes it out of this series alive, let alone this season. So that would be an interesting wrinkle.
It would explain why the show is positioning Wendy as the only one who can hear the creatures. It's, we're going to need to know why that is, but if it turns out that there is something unique about her that makes her able to communicate with the xenomorphs, then yeah, I feel like this theory kind of makes a lot of sense. And whether or not she escapes this island and remains on Earth with her newfound xenomorph connectivity, or escapes Earth maybe with a xenomorph and goes somewhere else to try and escape these corporations, would be interesting to me, in a future season.
Would you franchise the season in like an anthology way? So it'd be like Alien Moon next season?
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Noah Hawley to anthologize a show, right? Seems to be something he likes doing. And, this one, Alien Earth. The next one could be Alien Moon, Alien Mars, Alien Uranus. I mean, that's a weird one, but wherever.
That's just Alien
Alpha Centauri. I don't know.
We'll see what happens. I like this only because we talked about it in the preview episode. I think there's a way where it's like, if you want to take the science of these creatures and make them an ultimate weapon, controlling them is one way, but also like sort of becoming them or using their biology to create weapons would be another one. So I would be interested in like a Wendy that has like a xenomorph armor, that has like a xenomorph addition. So that in addition to being one of these crazy kids in like a android body, she also becomes the family of the xenomorph in a more complete way.
Well, and it's interesting too that Noah Hawley going into this season was kind of specific about sort of pushing away the idea that they're going to be dealing with any of the goo. But what if the goo is important? What I'm just, again, reiterating that I think it's possible that Noah Hawley and the show could be lying to us for our entertainment.
Yes.
And that maybe the black goo is going to be very important, right? Like if John has nailed it and this is the woman in the dark is maybe an inspiration for where this storyline is going, then we'll know very quickly if like the black goo shows up and Wendy starts interacting with it and it starts changing her in some way, right? Because she's a hybrid. She's not entirely an organic life form, right? We know that the black goo would like mess up a human body, but we don't really know a lot about the physiology of these hybrid bodies. Maybe there's something specific to her that would allow her to merge with it. And instead of like an armor, maybe the black goo becomes part of her skin and she gets like a xenomorph skin shell situation.
Interesting.
Kind of reminds me of like the Natasha Henstridge's character in Species,
right?
And she's like half alien, half human version, and she's got like the scaly skin.
Yeah. No, I was aware of the woman in the dark, but I always wrote it off as this was like the first Alien series of Marvel comics. So it was after 20th Century Fox got absorbed into Disney, and Disney has Marvel, so now Marvel gets to do Alien. And it was 1 year after Null. I think a little bit about Null from playing Marvel Rivals, but Null is the god of the symbiotes in Marvel Comics, and he used to be like the voice behind all of the symbiotes. He used to be sort of like a hive mind until he was contained in the planet Clintar by like an uprising. But Null is sort of like the woman in the dark to symbiotes the way the woman in the dark is to xenomorphs. And I was like, what an interesting comic idea to come from the same company 2 years in a row. But I do think this is an interesting place to go because the way the woman in the dark is presented in Bloodlines is like we think she's real. She's more of like a dream figure, but it's equally possible she is the inevitable conclusion of these two species fucking with each other, the xenomorphs and the humans. As it's at some point we're going to finally figure out how to smash these two things together, but what we make is the base of the xenomorph taking over the galaxy, which is an interesting idea, but an expansive one.
And it would make sense that, like, because, you know, this entire franchise sort of revolves around not only like the collision course between the xenomorph species and humans constantly coming up against each other, right? In the vastness of the universe, somehow finding each other. But as we learn from the prequels and Prometheus, they have a shared origin, right? Like the xenomorphs in the form that we've met the xenomorphs have come from both human hubris and the engineers, which, as we understand it, are what created humanity in the first place. So
can't wait to see. Maybe Wendy is
destined to be.
Maybe Wendy's the ultimate organism.
Yeah, I mean, if Wendy is the ultimate endpoint of human immortality, merging with the perfect organism of the universe is the next level, I guess.
Humans survive because Wendy's xenomorphs take over the universe. What a happy ending. The final thing,
and that's how the Earth gets totally fucked up by the end of Alien Resurrection.
Exactly. Also in the trailer, I wanted to notice there's 3 people in like rain slickers outside amongst the jungles, I'm assuming of Neverland. This is my guess for the Yutani and Morrow extraction team. I think it has to be small. I think it has to be covert because otherwise they're going to make whatever version of war we have between corporations a big deal. But I do think this is probably going to be towards the end because part of the episode this week that we didn't talk about in the calm but may not be important at all is the lawyers are going to meet. They're going to have some arbitration at some point. It would be really funny to me if this whole episode is like arbitration as things go by in Neverland, and at the end arbitration doesn't go, so Morrow gets to do his little plan. That's my guess for how next week ends.
Yeah, or if Morrow is infiltrating Neverland while Boy Cavalier is off the island doing arbitration.
Also true. And then finally, Neil, so many species on the Maginot. Are we going to see a Yautja in this series?
I was looking around Yutani's office for that plasma gun, man. I'm still very interested to see if that technology comes into play. Who knows? Maybe we see a Yautja. I would at least like a Yautja shout out, or some sort of reference to it. I'm very keyed into paying close attention anytime we're in the Yutani space, because that's where it would be. That is the person and the company that has the knowledge about the predators.
You think the final shot of the season is Morrow like setting down an alien egg next to a display case that also has the predator gun in it?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, who knows? And listen, I don't think necessarily, especially given the pacing of this season so far and how little time we have left, like I don't think that there's time enough to bring a predator into the show and have it interact with any of the characters. I do think it's would be more of an Easter egg type thing, but especially given again how much Noah Hawley has been obfuscating the truth about what's in his show. Which again, I'm not saying this is like a criticism of him. I think it's fine for him to lie for our entertainment because it's just setting up fun reveals. Right. It's not nefarious in any way. I do think that opens up the potential for there to be all kinds of different little references in this universe. And the more time we spend with Yutani, the closer I think we get to knowing whether or not they have, because the other thing that this establishes is that Morrow was specifically sent to LV-426 to get these specimens 65 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which means Yutani, 65 years ago, knew, maybe not specifically about the xenomorph, but knew that there was something out there. And I think that only further leads me to believe, or lends credence to the notion that Alien vs. Predator Requiem could still be canon in this, because that would also be like, that would be an inciting incident for someone like Yutani to be like, all right, this thing happened in Colorado where these two alien species showed up. We had to nuke them. The government nuked them.
Right.
But now we need to send our own expedition out to find them and bring them back and study them for weapons because they were badass.
Yeah. Or they got some sort of report back from the Prometheus that is the other half.
I guess that's true too.
And figured out how to go there. But I will be interested to see what if, I mean, I guess now my question is, this season of Alien Earth, we got 3 more episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Does it wrap up as a single season of television where it's just like, if that's all we got, that's a complete story?
Mm-hmm.
Does it throw to a potential second season of Alien Earth? Do we have like a hanging thread where we know exactly where we're going, or have a hint of where we're going? Or is it throwing to Alien Badlands because this is the first step in
Predator Badlands,
because this is the first step in weaving these franchises together?
I think it's a very high bar, but there is possibility, and there's still enough space for it to do all 3, which I think would be really interesting. And I think, listen, this is maybe me being too like Marvel brained, right? Like, remember the whole concept about the way Marvel reaches back now in the MCU to things that would otherwise be viewed as mistakes or like bad parts of their story, and is like, no, that's really important.
Yeah.
That feels like something that goes over well in the C-suites of Disney. So if I'm Noah Hawley and I'm sitting in the C-suite of Disney and I'm like, I'm also going to rehabilitate the way people think about Alien versus Predator Requiem, I feel like there's some Disney executive that sits up in their chair and goes, hell yeah, give this guy whatever money he wants. Because that's awesome, man. That movie sucked, but if you can make it important canonically, that would be the ultimate Disney thing. So, like, I don't know, it's ambitious, but maybe it's going to shoot for all 3. That could be fun.
Yeah. Wendy is arrested and sent to the penal colony of Fiorina. 200 years before Ripley gets there. Yeah, that'd be interesting. They could definitely try to save whatever they want. I
wouldn't put it past them, is what I'm saying.
I will say that overall, this episode, I really appreciated it. I appreciate it for being a horror episode. It did really nail in that I am much more interested in the cyborgs and Lost Boys conundrums at this point than I am in watching alien violence. And it will be interested to see if whatever climax they have coming makes me reverse my opinion on that. But I think that's a win for Alien Earth overall. I did not expect to be this much invested in this series. Because
I mean, I feel like I'm the same way, but now I'm also rooting for Mr. Octo to somehow survive and find some sort of win.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't need to win the whole thing, but like a final shot where Mr. Octo just crawls away.
He's the baby Earth. Grogu of this series. He could have a whole spin-off if he wants. What's up with Octo? Can he ever learn to talk? All right, I think that's going to do it for this week's slightly later episode of Storm of Spoilers for Alien Earth. Join us next Wednesday, where we will figure out what's going on with that wasp, hopefully, for Alien Earth: The Fly. Until then, go out there and I don't know, man. You're not going to get a share.
Yeah, keep your water bottles closed.
Good idea. That's good advice.